The rule of three is stressed as an important literary technique. It suggests that a trio of statements, characters, or events allows you, the reader, to understand that there is importance in what the writer is trying to convey. For example, the three little pigs and the big bad wolf, Goldilocks and the three bears, the family in metamorphosis, etc. We, as a species, are comforted by three. It's not too big, and it's not too small. It's the right amount. But three is weirdly ingrained into our spiritual mindset. In Catholicism, we have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And in other transcendent mindsets, we have the body, the mind, and the soul. We even have the rule of three in Wicca. The negative or positive energy you put forth, you get back 3 times. It's also in our culture. In the American government, we strive, sometimes fail, at following the basic belief of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our understanding of time is the past, present, and future, and when there is a fire, you should definitely stop, drop, and roll. And yes, the rule of three is ingrained into our DNA. You can survive 3 minutes of severe bleeding, survive 3 minutes without breathable air, or survive 3 minutes in icy water. You can survive 3 hours in a harsh environment, extreme heat or cold. You could also survive 3 days without drinkable water. And you could survive 3 weeks without edible food. 6 things related to 3. But what happens when the rule of 3 becomes a negative? For something so powerfully good, there needs to be equal amounts of evil to make it fully balanced. For example, the fire triangle, an oddly specific paranormal occurrence where people have spontaneously blown up in England. Or the famous Bermuda Triangle, an occurrence that seems to have been scientifically explained, but then explained again since I could remember. When related to a geographical triangle, the connotation is usually nefarious. Which brings me to the Bridgewater Triangle, the main focus of this episode. An area that seems to have way too many coincidences for it to seem like it was brought up by chance. An area that has been exclaimed to be a paranormal vortex. A place that offers a series of negative and odd occurrences that conveniently lie within a parameter of a geographical triangle. It comprises of curses, UFOs, ghosts, and murder. A little bit more than the perfect trifecta. But you'll manage, won't you? So sit back, relax, and enjoy. My name is Ellie, and this is my Tales of Two Cities special episode.
Hello?
Welcome.
This is of the Two Cities.
Oh, I'm so excited.
"30 miles south of Boston are the towns Abington, Rehoboth, and Freetown. 3 settlements in the state of Massachusetts that, for the state of all purposes, aren't simply part of the start of the United States history, but a series of peculiar and vulgar facts that connect in the triangle of bizarre. Yes, the state was part of the start of the country itself, but that doesn't negate the fact that these 3 towns are the basis of these series of strange tales. It all starts with King Philip's War. As we all know, our settlement on the United States really consisted of senseless wars and genocide. Basically, the land that we stand on today was taken in a cruel and unjust manner. But that's just the gist of the story. King Philip's War started the curse on this triangle through bloodshed and annihilation. So basically, the land of Massachusetts was doomed to fail from the start. The war was the last attempt to kick out English settlers by the Native Americans of the Northeast. Pokanoket chief Metacom, otherwise known as King Philip, led his people on a 14-month siege that destroyed 12 towns and wiped out 5% of New England's residents, all under the confines of the geographical location of what would be the Bridgewater Triangle. It lasted from 1656 to 1657. He was successful in his rebellion until August 12, 1676, when King Philip was shot and killed by recently converted Christian John Alderman. Alderman had seen his Native American race as a traitorous issue for the Christian faith and felt killing Philip would be acting accordingly. King Philip was drawn and quartered, and his head was placed on a spike outside Fort Plymouth for 20 years. The rest of Philip's troops were sold into slavery. Ignoring the savage and disgusting aspects of the tale, it caused negative effects for the settlement. It ruined the economy of New England for years and destroyed entire towns. And it created mass Native American burial grounds, basically a curse acting in full effect. I mention the curse because there are some notes about a certain belt that was taken away, causing a curse for the area. After the English settled in the area in the 17th and 18th centuries, there were several battles that in turn caused the Wampanoag people's wampum belt to be taken and then lost. The belt was, quote, curiously wrought with wampum, being 9 inches broad, wrought with black and white and various figures and flower, and pictures and many birds and beasts, end quote. In 1677, the belt was sent to the King of England, but it supposedly never arrived. This allegedly caused paranormal unrest amongst the Wampanoag people and created a cursed haunt for the Bridgewater Triangle. Some believe that if the belt is ever returned to the remaining Wampanoag people, King Philip's curse will be lifted. But moving towards Freetown comes another strange, yet oddly similar tale. Freetown Fall River State Forest, also known as Freetown State Forest, is a woodland that covers approximately 5,441 acres and has around 50 miles of unpaved roads and trails. The forest is a popular destination for hiking, fishing, dog sledding, etc. The woods originally belonged to the local Pocasset Wampanoag tribe, but American history is American history, and most of the land was acquired from them. It started with the 1659 purchase of Freetown, which was subsequently incorporated as a town in 1683, but continued without the proper consent of the tribe members. King Philip's War allowed the Pocasset Wampanoag tribe 190 acres of land in Fall River, Massachusetts, also known as Watupa Reservation, because they fought on the side of the English. But in 1907, the U.S. commandeered 100 acres in order to secure the city's drinking water supply. Only in 1939 was the land returned with an additional 37 acres. Reverting to our 9th episode, comes my first story of the complexity of the triangle. What I mean is, the forest is inhabited by monsters called pukwudgies. Well known by the Wampanoag tribe, the pukwudgies are troll-like beasts, around 2 to 3 feet in height, with smooth, hairy gray skin that is said to glow on occasion. Supposedly they love mischief and mayhem. They are said to intentionally startle people, throw rocks or sand in their faces, push or shove them, kidnap them, hurl them from cliffs, wrestle with them, or even attack them with knives or spears. They also contain magical properties and are known to be shapeshifters. When confronted with them, it's best to give them some space, something you should always do when confronted with any mischievous creature. But many have failed in that requirement when they saw and experienced the creatures. It is also believed that the creatures are the cause for the unusual number of people who have fallen from cliffs and died in that area. In the same forest is also the 80-foot deep quarry known as the Assonet Ledge, or simply the Ledge. There have been a series of abandoned cars as well as suicides in that location. Visitors to the ledge have reported feeling overcome with an urgent, unshakable sense of dread and foreboding. Many have seen ghosts jumping from the ledge only to disappear before they hit the water, or see spirits standing right above. But the ledge is famous for another paranormal encounter. In 1974, it was the location for a UFO sighting by none other than former President Ronald Reagan. The story was this: when Reagan was flying in a Cessna over the ledge, he, pilot Air Force Colonel Bill Paintner, and 2 security personnel experienced a strange light that was tailing the plane. The light accelerated, decelerated, and became elongated, all within the span of a few minutes. Then, it shot up a 45-degree angle at a high rate of speed, and then disappeared. But also keep in mind that Bridgewater Triangle is the location for several UFO sightings, one of which was the very first documented UFO sighting happening in 1760. In 1908, there was another one noted in local newspapers. In 1968, several people saw a large orb floating in the trees in the woods of Rehoboth. As I write this, I notice another theme of 3. In the same forest is Profile Rock, or Joshua's Mountain. The rock is 50 feet high and has a similar look to a human face. According to the Wampanoag people, the rock takes the image of Wampanoag chief Massasoit and is supposedly the location where the chief's son died. It's a sacred place, but has also been associated with ghostly activity. Another rock located in the same forest is the 40-foot-ton boulder known as Dighton Rock, which is approximately 5 feet high, 9.5 feet wide, and 11 feet long. The rock is covered by numerous and various mysterious petroglyphs, drawings of figures, geometric shapes, and alleged cryptic writings, none of which has fully been identified. There have been many theories for the graffiti, ranging from the native peoples of the region to ancient Norse explorers, or even the Phoenicians and the Chinese. Part of the 16,950 acre of the forest is the Hockomock Swamp, a vast wetland which covers most of the northern part of southeastern Massachusetts. It's also the largest freshwater swamp in the state. Is one of the main examples of the strange paranormal activity in the Bridgewater Triangle. Hockomock Swamp gets its name from the Wampanoag people, meaning, quote, a place where the spirits dwell, end quote. It is believed to be inhabited by both sinister spirits as well as the benign. The swamp is remote, with impenetrable thick brush, trees, and vines. It portrays an Indiana Jones's wet dream. Marshes, muddy rivers, ponds, quicksand, thorns, and sinkholes, you name it, it has it. Early settlers called it the Devil's Swamp. Some state the swamp is filled with creatures that have not been scientifically noted. Some are giant pterodactyl-like with red eyes that have been known to attack ponies. There are also numerous reports of a shaggy ape-like creature within the swamp. Sound familiar, anyone? In 1978, Joe DeAndre was walking near a pond called Clay Banks. When he turned around, he saw a large, quote, ape-ish and man thing, end quote, lumbering towards the woods. DeAndre was terrified and ran towards the nearby road. There was a thorough search in the area for any signs of the beast, but nothing was ever found. A few years later, fur trapper John Baker saw something similar when he was walking out on his canoe laying musket traps. Baker reported hearing something crashing through the woods and then witnessed a huge, hairy creature wade into the water and pass him within a few yards. The creature was described as being wreathed with a horrific, odious stench. Clearly, the water did nothing for him. The forest was also home for some murders. In the late 1970s and 80s, it saw a particular strike and sinister cult activities, with police finding various strange evidences, including an actual underground bunker that was supposedly used to carry out various cult rituals, and possibly human remains. In the 1980s, a bog worker complained of trespassers converging on his shack dressed in black robes. When the man contacted the police, investigators found a large pentagram in the ground, as well as a design made up of carefully placed stones. The pentagram was taken apart and the police went home. When they came back the next day, everything was back in its original spot. There have also been various cattle mutilations reported in the forest. For example, in 1998, a cow in the woods was found butchered, as well as a group of cows found horrifically mutilated in a clearing. However, the most famous Freetown murder was of Mary Lou Arruda in 1978. On September 8, 1978, Mary Lou Arruda was seen riding her bicycle near her home in Raynham, Massachusetts at around 4 p.m. At 4:30, the girl's bicycle was found abandoned by the side of the road with a skid mark from a car and a cigarette right beside it. Several saw a green car with a black racing stripe speeding away at the scene at around the time Arruda was thought to have gone missing. Her decomposing body was finally found on November 11, 1978, tied to a tree within the Freetown State Forest. It was determined that the girl had been still alive when beaten and battered. Her body was tied to a tree within the standing position, and when she lost consciousness, the weight of her body had caused stress on her neck and ensuing asphyxia. It was determined that she had died the same day she had gone missing. The police finally tracked down a man named James Cater, a donut maker who owned the same car matching the description. He also smoked cigarettes, the exact same brand that had been found at the crime scene, and had been in trouble with the law before. In the ensuing trial, Cater denied having anything to do with the murder of Mary Lou Arruda, although he would eventually be found guilty for a separate 1968 incident in which he was convicted of assault with the intent to rape, assault, and battery with a dangerous weapon and kidnapping of a young woman from Andover, Massachusetts. He was sentenced to life in prison, but still denies having anything to do with the Arruda case. The Ice Shack was another site for a mysterious murder. Popular during the 1940s, it became dilapidated and mostly used for drug deals and supposedly Satanist meetings. However, it became the home for a string of vicious killings by a pimp, an alleged Satanist cult leader by the name of Carl Drew. The story states that Drew used his Satanism to keep the sex workers in line, threatening them with human sacrifice if they stepped out of line. On October 13, 1979, the brutally mutilated corpse of sex worker Donna Levesque was found, and two alleged witnesses, sex workers Karen Marston, 20, and Robin Murphy, 18, explained later that it had been the ritual killing carried out by Drew near the Ice Shack. Marston was repulsed by the violence and sought to break free from the cult. However, that didn't work. On October 8, 1980, Marston was tortured and killed in an alleged Satanist sacrifice. Her hair and fingernails were ripped out while she was still alive, and she had been savagely beaten over the head with stones until taken out of her misery by having her neck snapped. Her head was then cut off and kicked around by other cult members. Her fingers had been removed and her rings were stolen. In the end, the cult carved an X into her chest, finishing the deed. Sex worker and survivor Robin Murphy told all of this to the police. The only evidences of Marston's case were bits of skull fragments and pieces of clothing that were discovered in the forest on April 13, 1980. Murphy testified in court and received a full life sentence. Drew, who had been implicated in the killing of Levesque and suspected of at least one other murder of a sex worker, was found guilty of the murder of Marston on March 13, 1981, and he would receive further prison time when he was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon on yet another sex worker. There were also 3 more murders, one of a homeless man mistaken as a cop, and 2 of 2 men who were shot and killed in their car. Going to Taunton, Massachusetts, comes a hospital with satanic connections as well. Allegedly, parts of the hospital were used by satanic cults during the 1960s and 70s. There has also been reports of ghosts who touched visitors and orb sightings. Traveling down Route 44 in Rehoboth and Seekonk, people believe that you are bound to see a phantom figure of a red-headed, heavily bearded hitchhiker. In addition, near Route 138, there also appears to be a ghostly apparition that haunts the road near Hockomock Swamp. Copacut Road in Freetown is allegedly haunted by a ghostly truck driver. Another 3. The Shad Factory and Mill ruins have a similar story to that of Hotel Hell in Wisconsin. Before it was the Shad Factory and Mill, it was originally the Palmer River Manufacturing Company, built in 1810. The company dealt with cotton, which means that aside from being built on a Native American burial ground, remember King Philip's War, it was also a company that survived off slave labor. The mill burned down in 1831, and its production halted during the Civil War. Then there was a second and final fire in 1884, which leveled the mill. Many have seen phantom flames similar to our Ohio penitentiary, and have also seen a menacing hooded spirit that appears in the ruins only to disappear when you notice it. Others have experienced a feeling of sadness and anxiety walking through those ruins. Some have had the feeling of being watched. There's also been a lady in white who have noted to roam the village cemetery in Hull, Massachusetts. Many have reported to see balls of light floating in the perimeter of the triangle. Actually, the concept of orbs have come from Bridgewater Triangle. But there's one last piece of evidence that makes Bridgewater Triangle so peculiar. It's a story we all have heard as a child. Well, we've heard its nursery rhyme.
Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 40.
We all know the story. Well, we don't know the full story, but we know the horrifying tale. Some parts were fabricated, like her stepmother had 18 blows while her father had 11, but it's a tale that is ingrained into our DNA. A child, even an adult child, killing her family. Why? We're supposed to love and care for our parents, not end their lives. When I first heard this tale as a kid, I was fascinated because it was something so foreign, so odd, that it had to be analyzed. There's still a disagreement about whether or not Borden killed her parents. Even though Lizzie was acquitted, it was known that the Borden sisters, especially Lizzie, hated their stepmother and father. He made their lives a living hell, enough to give someone to pick up an axe. But the Borden house lies inside the guidelines of the triangle itself. Even the location was the site of bloody genocide 200 years before, which might explain the weird change of behavior, or might explain the ghostly activity that has happened after. Many have experienced hauntingly terrible occurrences in the house. Apparitions of both the Borden parents have been seen walking around the hallways, and lights tend to flicker on every now and then. The owner of the B&B stated, quote, "Sometimes they think some come in already worked up about it. It could be something as simple as a light bulb burns out and their minds start going into overdrive. Some guests scare themselves out of here," end quote. Haunted or not, the Borden story falls under that peculiar guideline that the Bridgewater Triangle requires. One, 2, 3. Rock, paper, scissors, blood, sweat, and tears. Look, stop, and listen. Rules of 3 have patterns that we feel comfortable with. It's part of our DNA. It's instilled into the fabric of our government and is analyzed in works of art. 1, 2, 3. So, why does this rule not apply to the triangle? Why is the triangle so scary? Maybe it's because it has betrayed everything we know to be true. It's broken our rule, and because of that, it isn't right. The Bridgewater Triangle might be famous for a series of coincidences, but my only argument is this. When does the excuse of coincidences become too much of a cop-out? 3, 2, 1. If you would like to reach out to us, you could do so on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and talesofthe2cities@gmail.com. If you would like to hear an episode on your state, we would love to cover it. Also, if you would like more goodies from us, please check out our Patreon. We offer one-time only purchase deals that make it easy for anyone who doesn't have the financial abilities to help us monthly. You can also support to us by checking out our merch store, which is also listed on our Facebook, website, and our Instagram. Subscribing and rating us on your podcast device helps us out too. Last, but most importantly, thank you.